Ladies and gentlemen, and I can promise you this one is going to be a really interesting debate, something tells me. And the title is Human Space and Suborbital Flights, Advantages and Challenges, with the participation of Artemis Westenberg, Explore Mars Europe, Grzegorz Wrochna, Polish Space Agency, Christopher Welch, International Space University, Jason Michaud, Stardust Technologies, Paweł, Wojtkiewicz, Polish Space Industry Association. The debate will be moderated by Łukasz Wilczyński. Enjoy.
So thank you very much. First, I will welcome our guests. Let me welcome our guests joining us online. Hello, Artemis. Hello, Jason. Bonjour. Our debate today, our talk, will be about human space and suborbital flights, advantages and challenges that wait for us. So I have a first question to Chris, if I may, because I would like to start with, the question that will settle once and for all, I hope. The thing that was covered in media recently about, these suborbital flights of Mr. Branson, Mr. Bezos. So my question is, what is exactly a suborbital human flight? Is it a flight to space or not?
Well, a suborbital flight is a flight that does not end up traveling fast enough horizontally to go into orbit. The question about whether you go into space or not is a slightly different one, since there are two separate definitions of where space starts, and as yet we haven't managed to agree those. There's what's called the von Karman line, after Theodor von Karman. He proposed that space started at 100 kilometers. And then there's the kind of US definition, which is that space starts at 80 kilometers. And the reason this has become a thing in terms of space tourism is because the Virgin Galactic spacecraft doesn't go above 100 kilometers, whereas but the Bezos capsule does. And of course, since there's a certain amount of rivalry between the two, it's easy for Jeff Bezos to say, "Oh well, yes, Virgin Galactic. They're not actually going to space. It's suborbital. You can look down at the planet. You can float around as you like. It's fun, but of course, you're not really astronauts because you haven't been to space." I think this just shows the human obsession sometimes with trying to draw kind of very big distinctions. I mean, if this was 100 kilometers, they wouldn't be astronauts, but I would be, because 100 kilometers were there. And does that make any sense? No, not really. I think this distinction will gradually go away. At the moment, we're seeing private people go to space, and that's good. And then we're seeing, obviously, people go up into orbit. But as there are more and more flights, there are more people going to space, as their job. The exact argument about is it exactly 100 kilometers or 80 kilometers, it's for me, it's like, is Pluto a planet or a moon? I know people get very excited by it, and I see it as a slightly kind of false conversation. So I don't know if that answered your question, because I haven't told you where space starts, but...
Okay, but does anyone have a different opinion about that? That we can count them on space or not? Artemis.
Well, the thing is, of course, the word astronaut is, of course, here a problem. Are you an astronaut if you just take a flight up with either Bezos, Branson, or perhaps even Elon Musk if he just goes up and down? And not, around the Earth. Are you an astronaut? That's the thing, because aren't you an astronaut if you trained to do what you do, instead of just, being a space traveler? I think you're then, or a space tourist. I don't particularly like the word tourist. The only thing, of course, with this whole discussion about Branson and Bezos is that we are forgetting Wally Funk. She wasn't allowed to be an astronaut in the 60s, and she should have been, because she was one of the 13 women who actually did better in all the tests, the pre-test, than the Mercury 7. So they should have been, these Mercury 13 women. She had to wait 60 years to go into space, and now we say she's not an astronaut. I think it's, for most people, I will go like, okay, yeah, I was just, a space tourist or a space traveler. But for her, I would want to make an exception. Let her be an astronaut.
Gross. So Yep, of course.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I've realized that the International Association of Astronauts solved this problem by designing two logos and two kind of pins. Okay, those who orbit the Earth, they have a little circle added to the logo.
Okay, so easy. So actually, Artemis already partially answered my next question that was for you. Can you see any advantages for the space sector of these suborbital flights?
Oh yes, absolutely. If I'm a researcher, there are 4 ways for me to do my experiment in micro or zero gravity. I do a drop tower test, which obviously I'm not part of the drop, just my experiment is, and I'm observing it and measuring it. Then I can do a zero G flight, and now I can be part of my experiment. And zero G flight goes up and down several times, so I can do this experiment, and it's all relatively cheaply, like the drop tower test. And like I said, I can go there, and I don't need to be, very well trained or anything. I need to be healthy, I suppose, but that's it. So I can be part of my experiment. It's cheap. And I can test, whether it's okay. Now I do a suborbital flight. Now I think I need to train a bit for being a suborbital, traveler. So I train. Let's say that I'm, healthy enough and dedicated enough, and whatever the reason is, I can do it. And now I can again be part of my own experiment as a researcher. So there's a big advantage of suborbital flights because it doesn't come with the enormous costs of an ISS experiment, which would be the next level. I would be able to do the experiment myself. I wouldn't need to hand it over to an astronaut and explain exactly to the astronaut what I want to be done, and then wait for many months. I think 9 months or 18 months before it will, or perhaps even a few years before my experiment flies. And now, with the nice thing with these suborbital flights, they are supposedly, we're at the start of these things, of course, but they supposedly go quite regularly. A bit like, a flight to Australia which means that I can, do my experiment within a reasonable time for a reasonable costs, and I still can be part of that experiment. So from a point of view of science and technology and testing, suborbital flights are sublime. They're really a good extra to what we already can do. Now thinking of, going into suborbital flights myself, one of these space travelers, let's say I have enough money and I do it. That's of course a whole different kettle of fish. This is about showing myself the Earth, but if I go into space with the present people offering it, whether it's Bezos, whether it's Branson or Elon Musk, I'm actually not, if it's suborbital, I'm actually not going to be able to see Poland, because I'm going to go up and down, landing quite near to where I started, or even exactly where I started. And then I need to be able to see only a few 100 kilometers, perhaps a few thousand. But like I said, if I go up in the Mojave Desert, I am not going to see Europe. I'm not going to see this blue sea with this beautiful coral island or this working volcano on Iceland, because I'm all too far away. So this whole idea that you go to space, you go to the edge of space with a suborbital flight, but the whole experience of seeing the Earth beneath you and, turn beneath you, and you fly around it, that will not be yours. And I wonder whether people who are signing up for this suborbital flights realize that the images we get from the International Space Station are not the things they will see. They will see the curvature of the Earth. They will see, the difference. They will see, this is our atmosphere and it's really thin and fragile and we should take care of it. But they will not have that, orbital experience. And that will be, I think, a big difference. And I wonder how many of them will be disappointed.
Yeah, that's a long discussion. But let's jump to the real space now. So my next question is to Professor Wrochna, the president of Polish Space Agency. Why should we send human to space in the first place, as the robots can do such a great job, as we can see on the Mars yacht, for example, today?
Well, of course, we have to distinguish first between the commercial flight, tourist flights, okay, and the flights when the human presence is necessary to control the flight, to perform experiments, to conduct research. In the first case, well, for me, it's not very appealing to be a payload, like a box or something, but there are people who wants to go there and who are ready to pay a lot of money. Okay, that is very good because this money goes to the development of the technology. It supports the space industry. So I think it is very good, and I welcome that. But considering the flights when the human presence is needed, well, we as a national agency have to find a balance between some expectation from people that, well, we are a proud country, would like to have our people on the orbit, at the moon, maybe at Mars, and so on. But on the other hand, we have to be aware that it costs a lot, and perhaps there are other priorities of the country, there are other priorities of other people not having those ambitions. It is not easy to judge, but I think the solution is quite easy. We perhaps aim about to have 1 or 2 representatives from our country in space. We already have one, Mr. Hermaszewski, who was already in orbit. Now, ESA just announced a call for astronauts, and something like 500 people from Poland responded to this call. So maybe we have 1 or 2 astronauts. Why not? Of course, we do not plan a human mission to Moon or to Mars ourselves. No single country nowadays can afford that. Even US the plans are always international. Of course, we would like to participate in those missions. We would like to participate with providing some important components for the mission, some systems. For me, it is important to ensure that Polish companies, Polish institute, they will get contracts for this mission. And coming back to your question precisely, I mean, the human presence is still needed. And if you read the novels of science fiction writers, especially Stanisław Lem, this year we are celebrating 100 years anniversary of his birth. You can see that we can expect many situations in space when the robots cannot do their job, when you have to decide immediately, and you have to decide using not only your knowledge, not only your skills you have trained, but also your intuition, your feelings. Therefore, certainly for some missions, human presence is necessary.
Okay, thank you. Maybe any of you can jump in with another point of view. Maybe Paweł or Jason, if you have. Yep. Okay, so Paweł, next question to you, because I want to right now go to the business. Right, you represent the Industry Association, but you are also a director of space of GMV, Innovating Solutions. Now the human spaceflight depend solely on public money. So my question is, when do you think they will start to be a profitable business, according to you?
First of all, I would like to back to the one of the first your questions. Personally, I don't think that people which are doing suborbital flights, they're astronauts. This is my personal opinion. I mean, to have to be like in space for 3, 5, or even couple of months, it's totally different from being in space. I mean, almost in space for the 5 or 7 minutes. So this is huge difference. But back to your question. I think that I mean, human space flights are always being really close to the PR and marketing.
And I think that for the moment, and that was in the past as well, that for the moment we can observe that those companies which are wanted to provide those kind of services, space tourism, for the moment they are fighting for the visibility. So this is for the moment. But true behind of that there is a technology which is developed by the companies, and the question is if somehow someday in the future Polish companies or Polish scientific institutes can join to this group of the companies which are able to provide the solutions and technology for this kind of missions. So some days ago, I heard that the DG of ESA, Aschbacher, said that it is really curious why European space industry doesn't have the capabilities to send the people on orbit, while other nations they have those capabilities. On the top of that, why we don't have the industry which is able to do that, while other nations they have private companies able to do that. So maybe there is a light in the horizon that the European Space Agency, as an agency which have enough money, enough power, and enough technology to start the program of human space flight, not only to have an astronauts which are in fact using the other infrastructure to be in space. So this is my understanding, but for the moment, I think that the biggest benefit for the Polish industry from everything which is happening right now in relation regarding to the human spaceflight is a good PR of space sector. I mean, please tell me what was on the top, what was the hot news, and people can see that human spaceflight it's something real. Nobody in Poland will know that ESA, for example, has fantastic programs for the universe observation or Earth observation. Everybody will know that someday, maybe in the near future, within 3 years, I, as a Paweł, can buy a ticket and go into the space, and this is something.
Okay, so as a PR person for space, I'm flattered, but maybe we could deeply go to the topic. Maybe Chris, you can add something on from your side, because you are a spacist.
I'm a spacist, yes. Well, I think we have to think about what the word astronaut means. I mean, we can have these arguments about the distance, but it's really what does it mean in a kind of cultural term? What do we understand? And of course, the early astronauts were heroes. And so in our heads, astronaut means hero. And so that's why some people want to be astronauts. But then if more career astronauts are flying space planes, then astronauts become more like airline pilots. Now, that's still a pretty good job, deserving of respect. But if we get really, really good at space, then saying I'm an astronaut would be like I'm a truck driver, you know? Or I'm a bus driver. And I'll go, yeah, I've been on a bus. Hey, can I have my bus wings now? Because I've been on a bus. So you have to think about how things may develop in the future. If we are really successful at developing human spaceflight, it will become a bit boring, you know, and that's how we will know that we have succeeded, because all the wonderful technological things we do are amazing when we first do them, and then everybody takes them for granted, like live streaming, you know, talks all over the world from a lecture theatre. You know, 10 years ago that would have been incredibly ambitious. 20 years ago, people would have probably said it's too difficult. And the same, I think, will happen with space if we're good. People such as ourselves, we will always be enthusiasts about space because there are aviation enthusiasts. But, you know, most of us just get on planes. You know, I've flown in a plane. Can I have my little badge, please, to say that I've flown in a plane? It sounds silly. And that's how I hope things will develop. And this whole question about astronaut won't mean the same thing. There will still be explorers. Yes, you know, the first astronaut, you know, on Jupiter's moons, that'll be a big achievement. But, you know, just flying to low Earth orbit, you know, that'll be, you know, just every day.
Okay.
If I can add to that, I think you're right that it will become boring, and you will get bored very quickly. You remember Apollo 13 movie showing that for Apollo 11, the first landing on the moon. I mean, millions of people or billions even watched TV, and then already the third flight was not transmitted by TV. Okay, not many channels, right? I think we will have the same today. If we have another astronauts from Poland, all TV channels, all newspapers will be full of articles on that and transmission all the day and night, right? But the fifth one, nobody would care.
I will go.
May I add something? Yeah, I never expect that I will hear that going to space is boring or will be boring. To be honest, yeah, but I think it could be like that in the near future if we'll have this only suborbital flights. If it will be like if. For example, you will able to buy for €1 million a ticket for 2 weeks on orbit. That will be something. I mean, for me, it's a totally different.
Oh, let's be optimistic for that. I will go deeply right now into space to Artemis, because you are very famous of being a Mars advocate, and I want to ask you about this first mission to take people to Mars. Will it be commercial or governmental?
I think it will be governmental, because it takes a lot of organizing. It's not just money and a rocket. It's the training of the people. It's the whole setup, because we're going to Mars, not for dinner, but, because it's a bit too far for that. So we're going to stay there at least 4 weeks, perhaps 18 months. It depends a bit. Both time frames have to do with the orbital mechanics of both planets. I expect the people to land, I always say, is the 6th of October, 2033. And then I grant you that I might be wrong. It might be the 21st of October, 2033. But that's about the ballpark that we're aiming for. And we is NASA and other people that are building for it. So will we go to Mars? Will it be momentous? Well, the thing is, if someone steps on Mars, and it will be more than one person, of course, it will be a group of person, at least 4, we actually become a multi-planet species. And people will say, oh, that's just a nice slogan. No, it isn't. If we can live there for 18 months and the next crew comes and does that also, and the next crew, and you do that for, let's say, 20 years, then we're actually not just Earth dwellers anymore. And I always hope that will make us pause and realize that not just that this planet we're living on is very fragile and we can muck it up, which we've been doing quite wonderfully in the last, 60, 70 years. But it's also, I think, that we will realize that there is more to life than just, the grid, the grind of, a job and everything. There's something to dream of. And I think that very interesting. And I'm actually very curious what Jason thinks of all this.
I personally think that, again, relating to earlier, I think there's going to be a big wave of space explorers. And I think, on my perspective, that it will be government, like you said, but I think there's going to be some components of the commercial sector, because it's been advancing quite a bit. I really believe it should be a joint collaboration internationally. It shouldn't just be one government. And that's what makes space wonderful. Everyone just wants to collaborate together and create these crazy ideas that will motivate the future generations to go to space. And I think if we can join forces between many countries and people, like the Artemis Accord, which is wonderful, we can make this happen. It is still, though, a case of we'll have to address like the mental health aspects of it and the human aspect of it. You're not just going to want to send machinery and whatnot. It's really about having the first people on Mars. Are they going to be able to cope with the mental health aspect and the idea that they're so far away from Earth? obviously, a lot of them are going to be very excited about the prospective of it. They're going to be really, how would I say, taken by awe of how Earth is so far. But I think it might be like the first Apollo missions where after 3 days, they were a little bit complaining about stuff. I think technology got a lot more advanced. Obviously, the food won't taste like rubber, hopefully, anymore. So, you make an excellent point. We need the governance of the government, but I still believe that it's important to mix international collaborations and businesses in this, because everyone has a role to play for space, and it will advance by doing this together.
Jason, speaking of government, yesterday we had a brilliant talk with NASA Associate Administrator Robert Cabana, and he mentioned that we can see first people on Mars in the 40s. And let me ask you from your perspective, because we talk a lot about technology, governmental support, but what about psychology? What about our bodies actually as a human factor? Are we ready for that?
I think if we start acknowledging that mental health is awareness is an actual thing, and we start actually implementing it in our processes, and we stop ignoring it, people really start listening to it and not just try to say, hey, mental health is not a thing. We can get ready for it. There is lots of work be done in the industry, obviously. I haven't been to the Space Symposium in Colorado Springs. I noticed there's not much work being done on it. But now with the unfortunate event with the global pandemic, a lot of people have seen that mental health is actually a key factor in this. And it's not just about putting someone there and expecting them to be like super tough and whatnot. We really got to be able to create these solutions for them to address that before sending humans there. So that might be one of the playing factors before we can go to Mars. And hopefully it can be addressed. I think it's a social issue on a global scale, because as kids and even as a man, we're taught that when we're kids, we shouldn't be crying, we shouldn't be we should be toughing up and everything. And I think it's we got to get rid of those stigmas and really start talking and being open about it. And I think it's really important that our heroes, the astronauts that have been there, can openly talk about it to help people really like understand that this is something that we got to address. And we're just all humans at the end of the day. And if we want to make humanity a multiplanetary species, we got to address this at the government level and business.
Thank you, so, gentlemen. What are the other challenges that of this human space flight that has to be overcome in the following 5 to 10 years to meet these deadlines or timelines that are directed for NASA or SpaceX? Chris, maybe.
Well, actually, I was going to agree with Jason. In an earlier presentation, I presented a whole lot of ISU team projects that we done, and one of them was called Lunaris, which is interestingly also the name of an analog here in Poland. And what they were doing on that team project was they were looking at things that you could do on the moon to prepare for going to Mars, and they looked at multiple different issues. They scored them and then ranked them. And number one at the top was psychosocial issues. Keeping your crew healthy and sane for long periods in space, and that's if we're going to go to the moon and back, it's a few days, but if we're going to go further than that, I agree that is absolutely essential. I think that is one of the big challenges, and I agree that the pandemic has also shown how important that is. So I'm a physicist turned engineer. You might expect me to say propulsion or communication systems or stuff like that, but actually for long duration interplanetary missions, the human factor has absolutely got to be taken into account.
Okay, so one challenge. Any other key challenges we have to overcome, gentlemen?
Before that, yes. From the psychological point of view, there is one more very interesting issue, and the question for the people which came back from space: what next? What after? there is a huge challenge. The astronauts which were on the moon after back to Earth, they faced a lot of problems with the society, with the being again within the society. And I think it could be a problem also in the future if the human spaceflight will be very, very common. So imagine you were on the moon and you back to Earth, and you have a question: what next? What I will do next? What kind of feeling can be the same as being on the moon? And I'm not saying this because this is my opinion, but I wrote that in a very interesting book, which is described the whole Apollo astronauts and their life after being on the moon. And this is really good book. This is The Moon Dust, about the people which came back from the moon. I really recommend you this book because it's really interesting from this point of view. And regarding to the technology, I mean, I would say everything. Imagine that, like in aerospace industry, you have to improve even right now every technology. I mean, to make those flights safe for the people, to make those flights more friendly for the environment, and so on. So I would not indicate the technology, which is really important, because when I would say propulsion, someone from the structure will tell me, okay, the structures are the most important, and someone from the software company will say, okay, without software you will not go anywhere. So so I think that this is the question, not about the technology, but this is the question how fast we'll do it. And what President Wrochna said before, I mean, it's not really easy to go to the moon, to the Mars within 5 years, next 5 years. It's really complicated, and to make those flights really much more safer than Apollo flights, because this is also a nice story about the safety of those flights. To make them more safe for the people, we'll have to, I mean, spend a lot of money, to spend a lot of effort, and to have a time to develop the technologies.
Any other ideas I can challenge us? Because I would like to open this discussion to the public. And now will be the hard questions, right? To our guests. Okay, so I have a microphone. If you want to ask questions to our guests on site and online, I'm here. Just raise your hand. Okay, the first one goes here. Kamil, short question, please.
Okay, so we are discussing the mundane aspects, as Professor Welch said, that the space will be mundane. Well, we actually saw that in the movie Alien, where the people who made the first contact, legal lapses, the first contact were actually space truckers, not astronauts. So that's the mundanity. But my question here is, we are talking about humans in space. Recently, we were talking about robots in space. What about cobots and human and robot cooperation?
So I think Chris is for you.
Yeah, I can come back quickly on that. I mean, again, you do get this debate about humans versus robots in space. Again, I think it's another one of these false arguments. I mean, clearly, for some specific tasks, it makes more sense to send robots. For other tasks, it makes more sense to send humans. And a lot of the time, it makes more sense to send both. But human beings like, PC or Mac, robot or human, my football team or your football team. So I view this as yet more kind of slightly strange human behavior on these things. Obviously, you would send both. I mean, robots are tools. Would you say we're only going to send the human beings? We're not going to send them any tools at all? No, of course not. And tools are a spectrum from a spanner to a robot. So.
Okay, so but before the next question, anyone wants to add to this answer?
Just shortly,
okay.
When we enter into the competition between robots and humans, it means we have already done something wrong.
That's the point.
Just again, let me point out to one of the stories of Stanisław Lem called Rozprawa in Polish, the court, when there is a competition between robots and humans, and you will see what is the end of that.
Okay, so I think the next question, Remco.
Sure, thank you. Over the past 60 years of human spaceflight, we have seen the big heroes from America, the big heroes from Russia, Chinese astronauts. We have seen European astronauts, of course, but they've always kind of piggybacked on American systems, on Chinese systems, on Russian systems. What is the position in the future of European human spaceflight in this context?
Yeah, yeah, and that was what I heard recently from ESA DG. That this is curious. Why not? Why European industry? Why we don't have our own human spaceflight program? We have excellent launchers, and maybe we are able to get the next step and create the program for human spaceflight. So, I mean, what is the position of European industry and Europe within this whole race? I mean, still, if we'll not, as a Europe, because it is impossible for one country or even two, if we'll not pay a lot of money, because we are talking about the money, and will not decide that we want to have this capability to put the human on orbit or our own launcher, and I will not go anywhere. We will still be behind of China, Russia, US, and even India, because they are going to have their own astronauts on orbit.
But there have been European proposals, for human space vehicles. I mean, I'm probably old enough to remember, but there was the Hermes mini shuttle, okay, which was a primarily kind of French-German project within ESA, which would have gone on top of the Ariane 5, but the program went over budget. It was becoming very complicated, and that got cancelled. More recently, we had the automated transfer vehicle, and there was a proposal at one point to produce a human-rated version of the automated transfer vehicle, which could again be launched by Ariane 5. But none of these, I mean, the first one got cancelled, second one didn't get approved. I mean, it really comes down to the ESA member states making a collective decision about whether they want to spend the money on this.
I think that Artemis...
The thing is always money, money, money. Yeah, right. We do realize that in America, the general population spends about 5 times as much on toys for dogs and cats than the whole space program of NASA cost. Everything, including outreach, including educational grants and everything. So, it's not really money. It's about where do we want to go? And let's face it, Europe isn't poorer than the United States. Definitely not. We have about the same number of inhabitants. We have high quality universities, high quality students, high quality education in general. We have the power, the brain power to do it. We just don't have the political commitment because it's too fractioned. And so that's why we don't have a human spaceflight program. On the other hand, you could say, if we can rent a cap instead of building the cap, that makes sense too. So you could say, we should have more astronauts, but spend more money in renting the cap. So, renting the rockets to get our astronauts up. Because in the end, we want to get to space. It doesn't say we need to own the vehicle. To do it. It's more that do we have the commitment to send people to space, to train them, to really be a, space-faring continent, Europe, or not? That's what it is. And it's, like I said, money is a very silly argument, especially since we all...
But it's not the U.S. government that is buying all those cat toys, okay? It's the U.S. citizens, and so I mean I've used similar examples with chocolate, with makeup, with beer, in the UK for the same purposes. As a society, okay, it's true, but you have to distinguish between what the citizens spend their money on and what governments spend their money on. Yeah, but
the government spends money if the citizens think it's okay. And
exactly, and that's the problem.
In 2013,
the citizens don't think space is important.
Actually,
we think space is important.
No. They said the same thing in America. And there have been 3 times now a national scientific survey of it. 2013, 2016, 2019, I think it was. The last one wasn't done by Explore Mars, but by Business Insider. And we get numbers like 54% of the Americans think it's fine to double the NASA budget as long as it then includes putting humans on Mars. So, people want to spend money if they see something, momentous being done. And that I understand. I want to buy a really nice house, but if the price is a certain level, it does need to include certain things. So, so no, we keep asking that. Also, these questions found, and this is the reason also why the American Congress got into this business of indeed, in the end, getting humans to Mars. Why they do that? Because we proved to them that their voters want it. I believe, and Chris, I dare you, to organize between ourselves a similar survey of Europe. I bet that there are far more people enthusiastic about space and the possibilities than you and I think. Because when we did the first survey, Explore Mars, we didn't expect that 74% of the Americans would answer, of course, in 20 years' time, there are Americans walking on Mars. We were like, really? And the answer of 54% saying it's okay to double the NASA budget was astounding, because this question was put to them, and that could be said bad planning on our side, while sequestration, every department had to hand in parts of their budget because the Congress couldn't agree on the budget for the country. And, while that was going on, people were really worried about money for the education of their kids, for their healthcare of their parents, or whatever, money is spent on by the government. And still they said, if this is what we do, really what we do, then double the NASA budget. And that's one of the reasons why the budget of NASA has been going up and up and up quite easily, because Congress knows that it kind of got a okay from the population to spend twice as much, and twice as much as 18 billion is 36 billion, and we're not there yet.
I don't disagree with you there, Artemis. It's the relationship between, yes, we should spend more money on topic X, and B, I'm happy to be taxed more. And in general, my experience with the public is they don't realize how cheap space is. I mean, $36 billion sounds like a lot of money, but when you split it up amongst all the people and you look at it a week, I mean, I used to give a talk to the audience in the UK and say, would you give up 1 beer a month, to send a Briton to the moon? And it's the same thing, because most people assume that space is incredibly expensive when it isn't really, when you look at the population. So we actually agree on that, but I think it's a matter of the education of the public. If you say, please, will you spend a lot more money, if they think they're going to be spending a lot more money, then they react in a different way. We need to show them that space is cheap. Sorry,
Chris, Artemis, Pax Romana, because I have a next.
And actually,
next
there's
question.
one thing I need to say here.
I'll see you outside afterwards, Artemis.
I have a next question.
The European Space Agency did a survey, and they found that the Europeans indeed are willing to spend like 3 times as much on space than we are doing at the moment. So yeah, it's not the problem, the general population. The problem is politicians and where they feel they can score. And because of space projects always running more than, one government cycle of 4 or 6 years.
That's true.
That's the problem.
Okay, so truth. I have a next question, okay?
Yes. And I'll let someone.
And next question is more peaceful for Professor Wrochna. And Artemis, I think, too, Polish famous writer Stanisław Lem, we remind sometimes about him, wrote a book. The title was A Peace on the Earth. Peace on the Earth, and the main idea was that all kind of conflicts, all kind of wars was moved, get rid of from Earth on the moon. What do you think about realization of this idea? Thank you.
Thank you. Professor first, maybe?
Thank you very much. Well, I think the purpose, the idea of Stanisław Lem was not to picture the future in this way, but rather to draw our attention to the problem that even we go beyond the Earth, we go to the moon, the problems are still the same, right? So we better learn how to solve our problems today on the Earth, because otherwise we risk that those problems not solved on the Earth, they will explode somewhere else. I think that was the message Lem wanted to tell us, and I perfectly agree with him.
Artemis, because it was also a question to you.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't agree there for a very simple reason. If we as a group, this group with this panel would be sent to Mars, and we're 6 people, so that would be about right. We get to Mars, and now we need to, fend for ourselves because it's far away. We can't do help. We have a problem, we can do that, but then, it might take 20 minutes before we get any acknowledgements that we just said that. So the idea that we will export our wars to the moon and Mars. To the moon, perhaps it's quite close. It's easy to direct things on the moon from Earth. But Mars is too far away. In Mars, even if we are the first 6, we will have to contend to do it together. And if I have to rely that Jason, Paweł, Łukasz, Chris, all of you, that you are, the only thing I can truly rely on, then I better make it work. And you will think the same thing. So the fact that we will be able to start over, because that's actually what we're doing then, by saying, every task is just as important as the next one. It has nothing to do with, being a lower cost task or a higher cost task. That will make a big difference. So I actually personally think that will be the big advantage of going to Mars more than to the moon, because we will be able to show humanity that you can overcome differences in religion, in gender, in all these other things, that we can work together. We can be one united front, and we can have a better society. Because for me, going to Mars is not about, establishing a piece of land for the Netherlands or for Europe or for whatever. For me, it is showing the world that human beings are actually capable of having a better communal society. That's what my goal is.
Thank you. And with this united atmosphere, despite different opinions, we came to the end of our talk. I know it was very hot, and it could be very hot discussion, because we have a lot of the topics to have around space flights, but our time is limited here. Thank you very much. Thank you, our guests joining online, Artemis, Jason. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Professor Wrochna. Thank you very much, Paweł. I'm Łukasz. Thank you very much for joining us here. I can see also some new further astronauts also joining us on the stage, a very little one. So thank you very much, and I'm coming back to the host. Thank you.